This is going to be the first of many episodes that highlight repairs and or modifications to the Chevelle. And it has a lot of opportunities. It has a very nasty grinding sound in the starter, so some shimming will happen for that, if not a starter replacement. It has a floppy outside passenger mirror that won't stay in place. It has a door that needs to be adjusted on the driver's side. It has no interior lights at night, so you can't see how fast you're going. It has no turn signals. I don't know. There's lots, but that's not what we're working on today. Today, we're going to work on the stance of the car. That's right. The very first thing I'm going to work on is how it sits. I know that seems silly and not important, but it is very important. In fact, it was important to me as a teenager. That was the very first modification I made when I took over the car after Mom quit driving it. When we bought it in 1979, it had the typical 70 Malibu sag in the back. And she didn't care. Didn't bother her. It rode cushy and smooth, so she left it like that, of course. But when I got it, that had to change. So my best friend Daryl had a brother that had a 68 Chevelle that happened to have a set of Gabriel Hijackers. And he wasn't driving the car, it was just sitting, so we robbed him off of the 68 and put him on the 70 right behind us. Somewhere along the way, when Dad restored the car, he pulled the air shocks off and put factory shocks back on it. So when you drive it now, yes, it has the cushy ride that Mom enjoyed, but I don't like the way it sits. So today in this episode, we're gonna take the factory shocks off and we're gonna put, that's right, a set of Gabriel Hijackers back on the 1970 Chevelle. All right, I bought this air shock set off of Amazon for about $115. Comes, of course, both air shocks, all your hardware, instructions, air hose kit. One thing that I learned reading the instructions is you should never totally let them deflate. It says right there that you want to keep at least 25 PSI. Never knew that. Good to know. It helps to read the instructions. So there's the kit. Now it's time for the install. All right, so doing the initial review, pretty basic. You gotta love the old stuff. Got a set of bolts in the top and your big one in the bottom. And then we'll have to run our air lines, of course. So yeah, let's get these old ones out. All right, whew, finally got both shocks off. As you saw, we had to sawzall the bottom bolt off of that one. That was kind of a pain. The driver's side had a totally different type of attachment with a nut on both sides. It went a little easier, but I finally understand why the car sat so weird and was sagging so much worse on the passenger side. Here's why. Here's your driver's side shock. They're both Monroe shocks. Well, I don't see the decal on this one, but yes, Monroe. But this is a normal shock. Normal amount of tension, probably still a good shock. This is your passenger side. Ha! It is shot. So that solves the mystery. So now it's time to solve that, and we're gonna put the air shocks on. I hope it don't fight us as bad as the demolition did. Demolition? Just a little funny for you. I first climbed under the car with one electric wrench and one wrench for the other side. It has blossomed into many different wrenches needed. That's the way these projects tend to go. The shocks themselves are pretty straightforward. Just fatter, bulkier because of the air bladders in there. Even the hardware is very similar to a normal shock. But where you get into the difference, of course, is the air line. One for each. Bunch of little fittings. This is your T fitting where you're going to actually air it up or air them up. Apparently these O-rings are super important. And that's the only critical thing in reading the instructions. They're telling me that these double O-rings right here do not need to be more than 1/8 of an inch from the end of that airline. That's the only thing I read that is mission critical. So I'm gonna measure those out when the time is right, and we're gonna get this baby up in the air. So here we go with the air shock install. So we've got the shock all mocked up here. This is your lower mount. We'll actually tighten these before we get underneath the car. And then this goes into the bottom part of the suspension. And interestingly enough, it did not include new hardware for the top, but I still have the old. But I am going to add a lock washer to make sure that nut doesn't come loose, because they were pretty loose on the ones that came off of the car. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of reinstalling these. It's just the reverse of what you've already seen. But I will show you when we route these airlines. Okay, I said I wasn't going to show you the install, but I did run across something that was worth talking about. You'll notice that on the top of the shock, one side is slotted and one is not. Where that came in handy is I was able to start the nut on this bolt without the shock in place, slide it onto the bolt, then it's hanging there by that one, and I can get this one started. Whew, it took me a while to figure that out. I'm sure some of you guys watching that have done shocks a lot are going, no duh, but for me, it was a new experience, and I thought you might want to know about it. All right, the next challenge is the shock wouldn't quite extend long enough to get into the bottom suspension mount, so I'm having to jack up on the lower A-arm to see if I can get it to meet it. If you remember in some of the Jeep episodes, this has haunted me, but it's going to work out fine today. Now we can just get to tighten it all up. End up showing you the shock install after all. Didn't plan to, but that's how it works. If you're like me, sometimes you wonder why you have so many different tools in your toolbox that are duplications of each other, like ratchet extensions. Well, here's a case where they come in handy because it's taken 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, to get this shock mounted back up. People say you can have too many tools. I disagree. You need them all. All right, one more tip for you. This shock's fighting me. I couldn't get the angle right for the top second bolt. So I took a bungee cord and just cinched it up against the exhaust pipe to hold it in place for a second. Whew, nothing's ever easy. It wouldn't be a proper episode without me injuring myself in some way. But I didn't injure myself on the project this time. I actually injured myself yesterday, and the project just aggravated it. So yes, we were removing wallpaper at my daughter's house, and we were using a steamer, and the steamer was plugged in on the floor. Unbeknownst to me, I walked right by it, and I burnt my leg. And today, while I'm working on the Chevelle, putting the air shocks on, I rubbed that leg against a part of the car and scraped all the skin off that was grown over the wound. Yikes. Now I'm gonna go in the house, clean that thoroughly, and put a bandage over it. Wow. All right, so I got my leg all bandaged up. I can't say the word bandaged. All right, so I've got the leg all bandaged up, and now it's time to run airlines. The only thing the instructions say is make sure you stay away from pinch points and heat. Well, it's got dual exhaust, so that ought to be fun, but I'm gonna crawl under there and try to figure this out. I do know that the fill valve is gonna be just like it was back in high school. It's gonna be right there, mounted on the bumper. So I think I'm gonna start there and work my way back to the shocks. All right, another great use of the bungee cord is these Chevelles have the gas fill behind the license plate, and it's heavily sprung and it's hard to hold down. So we're actually going to capture it somehow, maybe around that edge, maybe. Let's show you here. Maybe I should have thought this through before I started the video. Okay, I actually got that to work. Wow. So first step we're going to do is we're going to place this T in this bumper, and then it'll split off into the two lines for the two shocks. But first challenge right off the bat is the holes in the bumper are too small for this to pass through, and that's actually the little valve where you're going to put the air in the shocks. So I will measure this outside diameter, get a drill bit, and we will make that hole a little bit bigger. If I'm not mistaken, I remember having the same exact issue back in the early 80s with the original set of hijackers. This is not the original bumper. It's hanging on my shop wall, and I bet you if I went and looked at it, that hole, one of the two sides is going to be wallowed out to make that fit. So we're going to do that next. Okay, so I've taken my little fractional drill gauge and I kind of went until the first size it fits comfortably, which is a 5/16. Got a 5/16 bit. I'm gonna go for this side right here. And a little tip for you, a little bit of oil helps, because it's probably gonna get pretty hot trying to go through there. We'll see how quickly this cuts through. That was the easiest thing that has happened all day long. And now, look at there. It slides right through there. And we'll be able to attach our two air lines to that. So we're gonna cinch it up first. All right, so the order of things is you have a jam nut, a washer, and a rubber seal that goes in the back. And then you have a little warning tag of that of that 25 PSI, 200 PSI max, which is kind of nice. So you just kind of thread that over there. And then there will be a little valve stem cover, valve stem cap, just like on a tire, that'll go there. Now, one thing I want to check real quick is that depth is adjustable. On this, I want to make sure the license plate doesn't stick out more than normal, and it doesn't, so that's perfect. So we are good with that depth. So we will cinch that down really just about hand tight. We won't put a lot of pressure because it's all plastic. And I'll leave that little valve stem cap off because we're going to actually put air, of course, in the shocks here in just a little while. So now it's time to run the lines from this T around to the air shock. So I wasn't quite done. I got to looking at it, and I can't have that warning tag clocked where air pressure is not in the right orientation. So I loosened it back up and made sure that it is sitting correctly. Yes, I do have a touch of the OCD. Hey, another reason not to go ahead and over tighten this is I just realized it's a whole lot easier to thread this fitting onto the T if you can spin it around. So yeah, I would tighten that last. Lesson learned. Correction to the correction. I have found that it's actually easier to thread these into the T off of the car. Lessons learned. The instructions do not say this, by the way, but it is a whole lot easier to stab this into this plastic fitting and get it to thread on there. And I'm gonna go ahead and run both sides off of the T and then mount that to the bumper, and then they will be behind the rear bumper running each direction, and I'm not trying to fiddle behind the bumper to get that to fit. So learn as you go. So that's a tip for you. Thread the T first and then mount it to the bumper. So here we go. We're gonna fish these lines, and they've been in a packaged in a circle. So they have a mind of their own, muscle memory. So you got to kind of wrestle with them until you get it loose, and you can just kind of send it down that general direction each way. That'll be driver's side. Just kind of get it out of the car. Yep, something like that. And then the other one we send down the passenger side. Something like that. Grab it from below, fish it through, and it's hung on the tripod. All right. And now, finally, maybe for the last time, I don't know, we will actually put this in place. But I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm only gonna barely install it because I'm not sure that I'm really done with that yet. We want to try to run the line around away from exhaust. So I think I'm gonna stay to the inside of this frame rail right here and back to the shock and stay away from the exhaust right here as well. So I'm gonna fish it through there, and I'll reconnect with you on video when we actually get to the shock and start mounting it up. So here goes the fishing. All right, an extra precautionary measure I did is this airline was wanting to kind of flop toward this exhaust pipe right here. So I just took a zip tie, a couple of them actually, and zip tied it to the shock itself. And now it's well away from the exhaust. So there you go. We'll just do the same thing on the other side, and we'll tie it into the T, and hopefully we're close to being done. All right, so we got the line run down the chassis, and it's tie wrapped in several places. And I just kind of coiled up what was left. I think you can cut the line, but I'm not really comfortable doing that just yet because I'm not 100% sure it's exactly where it needs to be. And we're going to attach it to the T and do the other side, and then we're going to put some air in this system and maybe get the stance looking better. Okay, one last thing we're going to do before we put some air in the shocks is I'm going to hit these exhaust tips and the rear bumper with some turtle wax chrome polish and rust remover. It will not get all of it. I am using some triple-aught steel wool to kind of get a little abrasive effect on there. Unfortunately, this all happened from the car being parked close to the coast in Lillian, Alabama. He was just a couple of miles from a bay that was saltwater, and none of this existed before it was moved to Alabama. In North Carolina, it was a really, really nice bumper. That's okay. We're not gonna make it perfect, but we do want to get a little bit of this out while we're back here. I've already kind of cleaned up the gas cap a little bit. It looked pretty rough. And I cleaned this spot right here before I finally, for the last time, mounted that little valve. So that's all we're gonna do. And then we're gonna put some air, well, get it back on the ground, obviously, and then put some air in the shocks and see if we accomplish anything. We'll see how it goes. All right, this is a great before and after shot for you of what steel wool and chrome polish can do. This is the passenger side exhaust tip before any work was done to it. We'll pan over here to the driver's side. Look at that. Pretty amazing. Definitely worth the effort. All right, moment of truth time. Gotta put a little air, see if the back of the car comes up. Yes! Yes, yes, yes. You can see that the rear of the car is sitting up higher. It's gonna really look good. I've got some 8-inch wide rear wheels we're gonna run on it. It'll make a little more sense for it to have a little rake to it. But wow, what a difference. No more saggy. It has a nice, nice stance to it. So yeah, there you go. All right, another wrap of another episode. Air shocks on a 70 Chevelle. Not the most difficult job, but it did fight me, especially getting the old shocks off. But man, does it look better. It is worth it. We appreciate you tuning in today. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that for us. Tell your friends about us. Give us a thumbs up. But most importantly, stay tuned to John's Garage because you never know what project we're going to tackle next. Thanks for watching.